Well, folks, Governor Tim Walz has announced he will not be running for the open Senate seat that incumbent Senator Tina Smith will not be running for re-election on, really opening up the race in the Senate seat and for the governor's race. If there are Republicans in Minnesota who want to seriously take advantage of the opportunity to get a hold of one of these seats, both of these seats, or some statewide election, this is the moment to do it right here, right now. We've talked about this before. There are many things for Republicans. I'm skeptical of it, but there are many things that need to line up just perfectly for the GOP, almost a perfect storm to happen in Minnesota for the Republicans to take control of a statewide elected seat. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we get into it, if you're new to our channel here, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. So, obviously, we know Tim Walz, the failed vice presidential candidate, was the running mate with Kamala Harris. We need to first acknowledge a reality. Tim Walz running for vice president extremely hurt him in the state of Minnesota. No one, the national media had not put a magnifying glass on Tim Walz and his past and really how much of a bumbling idiot the guy is. Minnesota, the magnifying glass just was not that, they were not looking at him that closely. Now he ran for vice president and it is going to hurt him in the state of Minnesota. Now he will not be running for that open Senate seat. So let's first start with the Senate seat. So the Senate seat currently held by Tina Smith. Right after Tina Smith announced that she would not be running, Lieutenant Governor from Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, jumped right into the race almost an hour or two after Tina Smith withdrew, said she's not going to be running for re-election, really angering people in the Walz camp. As we all know, after Tim Walz came back from losing the election, him and Peggy Flanagan, his lieutenant governor, have not been on the same foot. They've not really been seen in public at all. Some supposed or alleged reports say that when Tim Walz left, Peggy Flanagan was making a lot of decisions for the governor and making a lot of plans for after the governor won the vice presidency on what she was going to do in Minnesota as the next governor from Minnesota. Very much angered the Walz camp, created a pretty substantial rift between the two. Peggy Flanagan is a radical left-wing Democrat lunatic. There's a wonderful picture. I'm sure if you see any of my thumbnails, you'll see this wonderful picture that we use of her. It's like this is who we're up against here. Is this crazy radical leftist transgender LGBTQ activist right here. I love ranked choice voting. Yeah, more like I'm an absolute effing moron. I love ranked choice voting. What a joke. But 2026 Senate election, Peggy Flanagan, she has already declared. She is the left-wing radical side of the party, along with people like Keith Ellison or Ilhan Omar. Melissa Hortman, I don't really like her. She is the minority leader in the House of Representatives in Minnesota, former speaker. She represents like Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park area. I think she's an absolute moron. She has led the House Democrats and congressional Democrats through the last 2 years, pushing through the radical left-wing Walz agenda that has extremely hurt the state of Minnesota. Then you have people like Angie Craig who are much more on the moderate side. She is still a Democrat. Let's not forget that. But relative to where the Democrat Party is today, she's a much more moderate candidate for if she were to jump into this race. And then David Wellstone, who is the son of former U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone, who passed away in a plane crash just, I believe, days or weeks before an election about 20 years ago. So, you're looking at this Senate seat here. You have, if you get a radical Democrat that gets nominated for this Senate seat here, not someone like an Amy Klobuchar. She is radical, but she sells it very well that she's not radical. If you have a radical Democrat here, if you get a good America First, not extremely cringe MAGA, but a good America First Republican who has good name recognition in the state of Minnesota, this could be a very great opportunity for the GOP. Like I said, I'm very skeptical because there's a lot of things. You have to have the perfect storm for all of this to line up. But from what we're seeing, Tim Walz will not be running, which means he most likely will run for governor. He was very much hurt after the VP election. He lost it. Go into 2026 for the governor's race. I think his vice presidential aspirations are going to hurt him extremely bad in the upcoming election. He has been exposed as a knucklehead, an idiot, someone who just does not know their head from their ass. And how radical left-wing this guy truly is. You know, you look, what did Obama do? Obama was like, well, I need a vice president who can't outshine me. So you pick the idiot Joe Biden. Well, Joe Biden's like, well, I can't have a vice president who's going to outshine me either. So I picked the dumbest person I could have picked, Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris is like, how much lower do we have to go in this barrel? We're at the bottom of the barrel now. And then comes along bumbling knucklehead Tim Walz. And she was like, well, I can't have someone outshine me. So who do you pick? She picks Tim Walz. So that's what is the reality for this Senate seat here. What is the perfect storm? One of the pegs, you have a radical Democrat who gets nominated. Radical left-wing Democrat. That is anyone like Peggy Flanagan, Keith Ellison, Melissa Hortman, or Ilhan Omar. And so far, 4 out of the 5 people that have either publicly expressed interest or have declared are radical. That's number 1. Number 2, you need to have a good Republican, a good America First name recognition Republican. They have to have good name recognition here in the state of Minnesota. And I hate to say it, and I actually don't hate to say it, it's not Royce White. Let's just put it that way. It's not Royce White. Maybe Michelle Tafoya. That I could see that. I could get behind that. Julia Coleman, who's the daughter-in-law of former U.S. Senator Norm Coleman, one of the last Republicans to hold a Senate seat as a Republican in Minnesota. And I also think someone like a Ryan Wilson or a Kendall Quayles would be a good pick. Even a Brad Feinstad would be a good pick to run. I also I would have got behind Pete Stauber, honestly. He would have been one of my top picks. But then also this Adam Schwarzy, don't know much about him, can't find a lot of information on him. Former Navy SEAL, he's a business owner. He is a America First Republican. He could be someone to look out for as a dark horse, long shot candidate that could potentially throw his name into the race and maybe get some good name recognition. So that's what we have in the Senate seat. Now, looking at the governor's race, obviously Tim Walz has not thrown his name in there yet, but if he's going to run, it's most likely going to be for governor, unless he's going to stop and be an absolute moron and throw his name in the hat for 2028, which I think he will just get crushed if he does that. But he's running. This is one of the 3 pegs of the perfect storm that we need to see in Minnesota. Tim Walz, bumbling idiot, far left-wing lunatic. That's who we're going to have here. Can we get a good Republican, America First, good name recognition in the state of Minnesota? Which is hard to do. You almost need to find someone like a Sherrod Brown from Ohio who could win in a +5, +6, +7 state that then became a +10 Republican state. Someone like a John Tester who only lost re-election by about 4 points, in a state where Trump won by double digits. You need to find someone like that. You need to find someone like a Susan Collins, who in a state that Kamala Harris carried by 9 points, she can carry it at the same time by 9 points. Yeah, it's like that. That is who you need to find. You need to find that person in Minnesota. And who is that? Is that Michelle Tafoya? Is that, I don't know, is it Scott Jensen? I would get behind Jim Schultz. He's a lawyer who is the nominee, ran against Keith Ellison in the Attorney General's race, only lost by like a point or 2 in 2022, a bad midterms for Democrats. We're going to see. Who do I not want? David Hahn, who's the former chair of the Minnesota Republican Party. Yeah, no interest of GOP leadership. Minnesota GOP leadership sucks. They're terrible. You really hate to say it, but they are absolutely terrible. So I don't want to see him anywhere near this. Phil Parrish, though, I could definitely get behind him. I don't think he has the name recognition, though, that you need. Someone more like a Kendall Quayles or a Jim Schultz, I think, could be a good, formidable candidate against Walz in that race. We're going to see what happens, though. There's a lot going on here, but we know Walz most likely going to be running for governor, not running for Senate. So drop it down below. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments of these 2 upcoming races. And although I do think it's far off for the GOP to win a statewide race, if this perfect storm comes together, there is a good shot that the GOP could, with or if they take advantage of the opportunity, they could win a statewide seat in Minnesota. That's going to wrap things up for today, folks. We'll catch you next time.